Hello, everyone. It is so wonderful to be here and to have this time to share some thoughts with you today. Before we really get into the details of the slides, I want you to think about a feeling that is incredibly common in our modern lives. Have you ever felt like you are just a tiny, replaceable cog in a massive, unstoppable machine? Whether it is the relentless pressure of workplace key performance indicators, the invisible algorithms that seem to dictate the news we see and the choices we make, or even the subtle way we sometimes catch ourselves evaluating our friendships based on how useful someone might be to our career. It can feel incredibly exhausting and isolating. It often feels like the systems around us care only about efficiency and profit, leaving our humanity as an afterthought. Well, if you have ever felt this way, you are in very good company. This exact sense of being trapped by modern efficiency is something that some of the greatest minds of the 20th century wrestled with. Today, we are going to explore the brilliant mind of the German philosopher Jürgen Habermas. We are going to look at how he diagnosed this modern sickness, and more importantly, how he discovered a profound and hopeful way out. So let us begin with our first slide, the trajectory of reason. This slide gives us the overarching roadmap for our entire journey together today. If you look at the visual on the left side, you'll see these cold, interlocking mechanical gears. That image represents what we call the iron cage. It is a world where everything is about control, calculation, and treating people like tools or objects. But as your eyes move to the right side of the slide, you'll see this glowing, organic, interconnected network. This represents hope, emancipation, and what Habermas calls communicative action. Today, we are going to trace Habermas's intellectual pivot. We will see how he shifted the entire paradigm of critical theory from the deep pessimism of instrumental reason toward the vibrant democratic potential of communicative rationality. And finally, we will see how he took these high level abstract theories right out of the academic ivory tower and into the streets, redefining the philosopher as a public intellectual whose main job is to defend our everyday democratic discourse. So, how exactly did Habermas make this incredible pivot? Let us move to the second slide, the evolution of critical theory. Here, I have broken down his intellectual journey into a clear, four-step epistemological evolution. It is essentially the story of how human reason was transformed from being a weapon of domination into a medium for mutual understanding. Let us walk through these four stages together. Step one is the iron cage. This was the starting point, a place filled with despair, where Habermas's predecessors in the Frankfurt School focused entirely on instrumental reason and concluded that society was doomed to mechanical control. Step two is the epistemological break. Habermas refused to just give up. He made a linguistic turn, integrating American pragmatism and the philosophy of language to escape the old philosophical traps that had ensnared his teachers. Then we reach step three, the communicative paradigm. Here, the entire focus shifts to mutual understanding. Reason is completely redefined. It is no longer about forcing your will on someone else. It becomes about reaching an uncoerced dialogic consensus. Finally, we arrive at step four, the public intellectual. This is where theory translates into democratic intervention. The philosopher steps into the public sphere to defend the open exchange of ideas. Over the next portion of our talk, we are going to unpack each of these steps in detail so you can see exactly how this transformation happens. Let us go back to that starting point. Why were the early philosophers so incredibly depressed about the modern world? This brings us to the third slide, the despair of instrumental reason. The early thinkers of the Frankfurt School, famous figures like Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, looked closely at our society and diagnosed it as being completely trapped by functional efficiency. They observed that the human drive for self preservation, which drove the massive wave of industrialization, had mutated into a terrifying system of absolute control. They formulated a concept called the dialectic of enlightenment. The Enlightenment period was historically supposed to free humanity from myth and superstition, but Adorno and Horkheimer argued that the very rationality meant to liberate us had inherently become a tool to subjugate both external nature and internal human impulses. Rationality became indistinguishable from domination. The ultimate outcome of this was the iron cage, a concept rooted in Max Weber's sociology but expanded here to describe total reification. Society becomes a closed, inescapable matrix. Human relations are assimilated into the material world of objects, leaving no theoretical escape route. And so, pessimism completely dominates. Think about a modern corporation that manages its employees strictly through surveillance and data algorithms, tracking even their bathroom breaks to maximize productivity. That system is highly rational and efficient, but it treats living humans as mere objects. That cold, calculated efficiency is exactly the despair of instrumental reason they were warning us about. You might wonder, why was there no escape route for these early thinkers? Habermas argued that the problem lay in the very foundation of how they viewed the world. Let us look at the fourth slide, the architecture of domination. The older generation of philosophers was stuck in what is known as the philosophy of consciousness. This is a very traditional way of thinking where you have a subject, meaning the human mind or the actor, looking out at an object, which could be nature, society, or even other people. If you look at the diagram, you will see a downward arrow from the subject to the object. In this traditional view, the only way the subject interacts with the object is through manipulation and efficacy. The cognitive goal is complete control and the instrumental success. The medium used to achieve this is labor and technology. But here is a fatal flaw, which is highlighted in red on the slide. This model reduces all human relationships and ethical norms to mere strategic calculations. If you view the world strictly through this subject object lens, other people are just resources to be used or obstacles to be removed. It offers absolutely no framework for mutual recognition. It creates a theoretical dead end. If your only tool is a hammer of control, every human interaction looks like a nail to be driven in. Under this architecture, society can only ever be a cold, mechanical cage. Habermas flatly refused to accept this pessimistic dead end. He knew there had to be another way. Slide 5 shows us how he broke free. The headline is Escaping the Philosophy of Consciousness. Habermas realized that the subject object model was a severe bottleneck. If reason is only a tool for manipulation, then society can only be a machine. So he needed a catalyst to break the theoretical gridlock. He found this catalyst by looking outside his own German philosophical tradition. He integrated Anglo American pragmatism, studying thinkers like Charles Sanders Peirce and George Herbert Mead, and he brought in linguistic philosophy from figures like Ludwig Wittgenstein, J.L. Austin, and John Searle. By bringing these new ideas into critical theory, Habermas achieved something monumental. He initiated a massive paradigm shift. The core philosophical question completely changed. For centuries, philosophy had asked, how do I control the object? Habermas shifted the question to, how do we understand each other? I want you to just pause and think about the profound difference between those two questions. One is about domination and treating the world as a thing. The other is about connection, empathy, and treating others as equal partners. By changing the question, Habermas found the exit door to the iron cage. This brilliant realization leads us to slide 6, language as the engine of reason. In the older way of thinking, language was simply viewed as a static mirror reflecting reality, just a tool to pass along information or issue commands. But through his linguistic turn, Habermas realized that language is much more dynamic and fundamental to our humanity. When we speak to someone, we are not just exchanging data packets like computers. We are actively trying to establish a relationship. Habermas developed a concept called universal pragmatics. He argued that built into the very structure of human language, into the very act of speaking, is a fundamental, inherent orientation toward reaching understanding. Every single time you open your mouth to genuinely talk to someone, You are implicitly agreeing to a set of rules. You are stepping out of the iron cage of manipulation and stepping into a cooperative search for truth. Language itself is the engine that drives a completely new, emancipatory kind of reason. It is the very fabric that holds human society together not through force, but through shared meaning. And that insight blossoms into his greatest contribution, shown on slide 7, the hope of communicative rationality. Here, reason is no longer a tool of conquest. It is redefined as a dialogic process deeply embedded in our everyday communication. This kind of reason fosters non-coercive integration. To make this clear, Habermas draws a sharp dichotomy of action. On one hand, we have instrumental action. This is egocentric and success-oriented. Actors treat others merely as a means to an end. It is like a salesperson using psychological tricks just to manipulate you into buying a car you do not need. On the other hand, we have communicative action. This is intersubjective and understanding oriented. Actors seek genuine consensus and mutual recognition. The core logic here is truly beautiful. Habermas declares that human action can be coordinated not by the threat of power and not by the incentive of money, but by what he famously calls the unforced force of the better argument. Let me give you a relatable everyday example. Imagine a family trying to decide where to go for dinner. If the father says, I am paying the bill, so we are eating steak, that is using the incentive of money and power. But if the mother says, we had heavy meals all week, and a light seafood dinner would be healthier and make us all feel better tonight, and the family agrees because her point simply makes more sense. That is the unforced force of the better argument. People are persuaded by reason, not coerced by power. That is communicative rationality shining through in daily life. But when we argue and try to reach this kind of rational consensus, what exactly are we talking about? Slide 8 explains this by mapping out the three worlds of discourse. Habermas points out that every single communicative act we make simultaneously makes three distinct validity claims about reality. We might not realize we are doing it, but it happens every time we speak genuinely. First, there is the objective world. The goal here is establishing facts and scientific truth. The validity claim is truth. We are asking, is the statement factually accurate? Second, there is the social world. The goal here is establishing norms and law. The validity claim is rightness. We are asking, is the action morally and contextually appropriate? And the third, there is the subjective world. The goal here is expressing emotions and art. The validity claim is sincerity. We are asking, is the speaker expressing their true intentions? Let us ground this in a real world scenario. Imagine your manager asks you to work overtime all weekend without pay. If you argue back, you are actually testing these three words. Objectively, you might ask, is the project actually behind schedule? That is testing the truth. Socially, you might ask, does our company policy or labor law allow you to demand unpaid weekend work? That is testing rightness. And subjectively, you might wonder, is my manager genuinely stressed about the deadline, or is he just trying to squeeze free labor out of me to make his own budget look good? That is testing sincerity. A true, uncoerced consensus can only be reached when all three of these validity claims hold up to scrutiny in an open conversation. Now, knowing that we have this amazing capacity for communicative rationality, a big question arises. Why is modern life still so stressful, alienating, and exhausting? Slide 9 gives us Habermas's brilliant and somewhat tragic diagnosis. It is called the colonization of the life world. Habermas divides modern society into two main spheres. At the bottom, we have the life world. This is the organic, self-evident realm of family, community, and culture. It is naturally governed by language, consensus, and a shared cultural background. It is where we find meaning and solidarity. Hovering above it is the system. The system consists of the capitalist economy and the state administrative bureaucracy. The system does not run on language or consensus. It runs on cold, hard steering media, specifically money and power. The defining crisis of modern society, the real pathology of modernity, occurs when the system oversteps its boundaries. As the graphic dramatically shows, the mechanical pipes of the economic administrative system aggressively breach the boundaries of the fragile, glowing life world. Systemic imperatives act like a parasite. They invade the life world and replace our communicative rationality with cold, instrumental logic. We see this everywhere today. Think about how the logic of money has invaded areas of life that used to be governed by care and community. When parents start paying their children cash for every chore they do around the house, or when healthcare becomes entirely about maximizing profit margins per hospital bed rather than genuinely caring for patients, that is, the system colonizing the life world. It strips away meaning, creates psychological alienation, and leads to the profound burnout so many people feel today. Our human interactions are replaced by administrative cases and financial transactions. Faced with this systemic overreach, what are we supposed to do? Do we just surrender? Absolutely not. Slide 10 shows us the path forward. Theory translates to democratic intervention. Habermas firmly believes that philosophy cannot just sit idly in the ivory tower. It must actively intervene in societal debates and defend our democratic institutions. He redefines the role of the intellectual. The intellectual is not some philosopher king commanding policy from above, telling everyone else how to live. Instead, the intellectual is a critical voice from within the public sphere, working to enhance the rationality of the debate. The primary goal here is to activate citizens' communicative power. The philosopher's job is to arm the public with the critical awareness needed to push back against the expansion of systemic control. When everyday people recognize that money and power are invading their private lives, they can use their communicative power to say no, to draw a line in the sand, and to force the system back into its proper place. Where exactly does this crucial pushback take place? It happens in the arena shown on slide 11, the deliberative public sphere. Habermas traces a fascinating systemic evolution of this space. It started historically as the classical public sphere. Think of the vibrant coffee houses and salons of the 18th century, where private individuals gathered to form a public body, suspending their social hierarchies to engage in rational critical debate about matters of general interest. However, as society evolved, we experienced a period of refeudalization. The public sphere was hijacked by mass media, public relations, and consumerism. Entropy set in. The horizontal networks of debate were replaced by top down broadcasting. Citizens were reduced from active debaters to passive consumers of media and political spectacles, leading to a severe legitimation crisis for the state. The normative upgrade, the solution Habermas proposes, is deliberative democracy. This is step 4 on our chart. We have to rebuild legitimacy through procedurally regulated, uncoerced discourse between free and equal citizens. Democracy cannot just be about dropping a piece of paper in a ballot box every few years. It must be rooted in a continuous, restored horizontal network of discourse, where people actively deliberate on the laws that govern them. Now, anyone who has spent 5 minutes on the internet knows that real world public debates can be chaotic, biased, and heavily manipulated by power and money. Habermas is well aware of this reality. To address it, he proposes the concept outlined on slide 12, the ideal speech situation. He identifies specific procedural prerequisites to guarantee that a consensus is truly rational and fair. There are 4 main conditions. First is inclusivity. All capable subjects must be allowed to participate in the discourse. No one affected by a decision can be excluded. Second is equality. Everyone has an equal right to question, to introduce topics, and to express their attitudes freely. No voice is inherently more valuable than another. Third is non coercion. There can be no internal or external force, no threat, and no systemic power that hinders a subject's participation. And finally, the ultimate standard. The unforced force of the better argument must be the sole deciding factor in resolving conflicts. While we may rarely achieve this perfect ideal speech situation in our messy reality, it serves as an indispensable measuring stick. It is a normative standard, When we walk into a corporate meeting or a town hall and see people being silenced or bullied, we use this ideal standard to call out unfairness and demand a more rational, inclusive process. Taking this ideal and applying it to real institutions brings us to slide 13, bridging the ivory tower and the agora. Habermas envisions a continuous circulatory system of democratic legitimacy. At the center of this vision is what we can call the glass parliament. It is a beautiful metaphor. It represents transparent law and binding legitimacy. In this model, democratic legitimacy derives solely from laws forged through inclusive, rational, and uncoerced public discourse. The state is no longer an opaque block, a mysterious black box, making rules behind closed doors. Transparency acts as a conduit. Imagine a vibrant civil society, the Agora, buzzing with informal debates, social movements, and civic associations. The ideas generated in this grassroots public sphere flow upward through the transparent medium of law, directly translating communicative power into administrative power. The parliament acts as an institutional sounding board, picking up the signals from the public and refining them into binding laws. This seamless connection bridges the gap between deep philosophical principles and everyday political reality. As we near the end of our exploration today, slide 14 offers a vital summary, the paradigm shift in critical reason. Habermas essentially rescued human reason by shifting its philosophical foundation. On the left, we see the old philosophy of consciousness, a lineage tracing from Descartes through Kant to the early Frankfurt School. This view relied on instrumental reason and solitary logic. It focused heavily on control, domination, and manipulating the objective world. As we discussed, this inevitably led to the despair of the iron cage. On the right, we see Habermas's breakthrough, communicative action. He shifted the foundation to an intersubjective, language-based model. Reason is no longer a solitary calculation. It is communicative reason. It relies on intersubjective consensus and focuses entirely on mutual understanding. This paradigm shift breathes life back into critical theory, moving us from a philosophy of despair to a sociology of hope. This brings us to our final slide, slide 15, the unfinished project of modernity. In the late 20th century, many cynical postmodern philosophers declared that the Enlightenment had failed, that reason was a myth, and that modernity was dead. Habermas vigorously rejected this despair. He boldly defends modernity, asserting that communicative rationality can indeed overcome the exhaustion of the Enlightenment. Modernity is not a failed monument. It is a continuous building process requiring our active participation. Reason is not a tool of ultimate conquest, nor is it some dusty relic of the past. As the final insight on the slide reminds us, reason is the daily procedural practice of reaching an understanding with others. The defense of human autonomy is an ongoing practice. It is sustained by the fragile yet incredibly resilient power of communicative action. As long as the channels of uncoerced public discourse remain open, as long as we are willing to sit down, look each other in the eye, and be persuaded by a better argument rather than brute force, the democratic project remains alive and well. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by the rigid systems, the algorithms, and the pressures of modern life, remember that the key to our emancipation is already built into our everyday language. We just have to use it. Thank you so much for joining me today in this deep dive. I hope you walk away feeling a little more empowered to engage in the beautiful, unfinished project of our shared humanity.